There are many broken things happening in every 1v1 Magic the Gathering format, and many people that play Magic may not be able to attribute specific reasons as to why a certain card might be broken. You might be directly playing that format, but only a certain archetype and not be able to put your finger to the nose there. Or you might be indirectly speaking to someone about a different format, but not have the full context. And in today's video, I wanted to provide such context, give you the clue ins as someone that plays almost any Magic format at this point and may not be a master of all, but has the context in these formats to understand why specific key cards are broken and ones that are actually legal across many formats. You get to see the effect that they have in said formats. Today, you've clicked on this video through the title and thumbnail to understand Balustrade Spy and how this card is having a major impact in many formats now, and probably by the end of this year will likely get banned in multiple formats, if not at least one or two. It's already been banned in one in Pioneer, which we're going to discuss. But what I wanted to do, as I mentioned, was provide you the context as to why. What is the margin that takes Balustrade Spy over the top? What is the context for it? And how can you then use this as a heuristic to maybe help you understand what takes a card over the edge in terms of playability and or power? What is the reason that a card gets broken? And is the card itself the problem? Or is it the support cards around it? Is Wizards of the Coast willing to ban the actual broken cards? Or are we just going to have cards of the past die for the sins of the present? And there are many examples of cards that go both ways. Part of that has to do with like stuff on the reserve list and, stuff in Eternal Magic. But Balustrade Spy is a little bit more cut and dry. Gatecrash printed originally black and 3 for a 2/3 flying vampire rogue. It says when this creature enters, target player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card, then puts those cards into the graveyard. The key to this is that because it's target player, it doesn't need to be your opponent. It has famously been yourself. Balustrade Spy, along with Undercity Informer, has been the cornerstone piece of many a combo decks, many Oops All Spells decks, if you've heard that name, or landless decks that are full of modal double face cards at this point. This card used to be a fringe playable meme that was possible in Eternal formats where you had broken fast mana, such as Lotus Petals and Simian Spirit Guides and Elvish Spirit Guides. But now with the onset of MDFCs and their popularization through multiple sets, Balustrade Spy, Goblin Charbelcher, cards like this have a new meaning. They have a new level of playability, and it's really the support cards that break this card. I'm going to kind of bury the lead a little bit here. It may not actually be Balustrade Spy that you see being the broken card, although all these combo decks, whether they be named Oops All Spells or some version of X Spy or Spy X, the namesake goes to Balustrade Spy. It is the card at the front. It is the card that starts the combo. So let's break it down. Let's understand why this card is broken, or why this card is actually just maybe the poster child for a larger problem. Now, MDFCs have to be a part of this discussion. One of the most broken cycle of cards ever printed in Magic's history. It's no surprise that arguably the most broken cycle of cards in Magic's history are actually lands themselves, the fetch lands. The fetch lands fundamentally break the resource acquisition in the formats that they're legal in. It opens up a wider variety of possibilities than in formats that don't have them, like Pioneer and Standard. But in Modern, in Legacy, and in Vintage, where you do have them possible, even in Commander, fetch lands are absolutely dominant. They give you access to almost any color at a whim. And so it stands to reason that lands from then on would continue to be powerful. The ability for a land to be something else, a land to be any color at any time, is very powerful, which is why stuff like Mana Confluence has the Mana Confluences and the City of Brasses of the world are very powerful. But when the lands themselves stop being just lands, but also end up being spells in a way to reduce the randomness in the game, that's when we have a problem. Because Magic's key facet, the one that the casuals can't get past, and then they flock to other games like Lorcana or One Piece TCG that have more casual aspects to them, don't have the deep breadth of knowledge involved, are easy to master, easy to learn, let's be honest here, lack the depth because they try and reduce the randomness that comes as a plus to Magic. When MDFC serves to be a land on the back and a spell on the front, that is where you start to break the symmetry of things. Because Balustrade Spy at a level 1 mills you until you find a land. What if your deck is full of spells because the front face is a spell, but the flip side is a land? So it never detects the land whatsoever while you have a handful of lands that are also spells. So again, MDFCs are a key part of the history and the power of current Balustrade Spy, but it doesn't mean that it was like this all the time. Notably, this may not exactly be a Balustrade Spy deck, although Spy is in here. One of the more historic cases of, oops all spells or decks that can mill itself out completely, you are looking at something like Legacy Manaless Dredge. And the whole idea with this deck is that it served as a budget option to get into Legacy with some of its more powerful interactions. What you would do is you would always go second. You would draw your card, you would keep your 8 or your 7, you then draw into 8, and then you would go to discards, and then you would discard some level of a dredge card, whether that be Golgari Grave Troll, whether that be Stinkweed Imp, those are your ideal targets. And then the turn after that, you would go to draw, that would be replaced by your dredge. And so at that point, you would be able to slowly make your way through the game from there. You would gain value through, maybe a Phantasmagorian being in your graveyard to allow you to discard more cards, creatures leaving, triggering Bridge from Below, interacting with your opponent through Cabal therapies, Dread returning by sacrificing those zombies that you're getting off of Bridge from Below, and Cabal therapy triggering it, all that stuff, and returning other powerful creatures such as Chancellor of the Annex or Hogak the Arisen Necropolis being able to cast out of your graveyard. So Manaless Dredge as a initial version of a deck that was very high risk, high reward, it was very easy to answer. Before the age of Force of Vigor, this deck would really lose to a Leyline of the Void in many situations just super early. If you had a Leyline pregame action, the deck had very few answers to it. Now, even still, you have Force of Vigor, but you have to be able to draw into Force of Vigor. If you're playing Manaless Dredge, you don't want to be mulliganing too hard, or else you just can't get cards into your graveyard. So it's a plus or minus, but it's a deck that can mill itself out to then get out cards where is it? I'm looking for Icarid. Yeah, there you go, Icarid. So at the beginning of your upkeep, if Icarid is in your graveyard, you may exile a black creature card other than Icarid from your graveyard. If you do return Icarid to the battlefield at the beginning of the end step, you sacrifice it, but then it's a 4-mana 3/1 with haste. So it comes out from the graveyard for free. Phantasmagorian does something similar. Hogak comes out as an 8/8 as well that you can cast from the graveyard. Again, all of these cards coming out for free alongside different cards that deal some amount of damage or gain some value. Manaless Dredge was the original of this archetype. Next, we even have an article that points it out called Oops All Spells. And on November 7th, 2013, this article does a very good job of showcasing the power of what it's like to play without the traditional lands itself. Now, I love this because this article from 2013 is showcasing Laboratory Maniac, but because of the way it's coded, it's taking one of the more recent, it's taking the most recent printing of Laboratory Maniac, which is a Final Fantasy card. So this is like actually a funny, like, oops, where it's not really an oops. It's like a future proofing your coding, but like a 2013 article showcasing Universes Beyond in a world where you could never picture Universes Beyond. I just thought that was a funny moment. But the whole point of this deck is you mill yourself out with Undercity Informer, which is very similar to Balustrade Spy, printed in Gatecrash. You can pay 1, sacrifice a creature, not just this creature, but you can sacrifice Undercity Informer to yourself. So 4 mana in total, just like Balustrade Spy. Target player reveals cards from the top of his or her library until they reveal a land, then put those cards into the graveyard. So very similar effect to Balustrade Spy. You mill your entire deck, then you end up with a bunch of Narcomoebas in play, and then you flashback Cabal Therapy to make sure the coast is clear. So you might Cabal Therapy for something like Fairy Macabre, which might be too late at that point, but you're looking at counter spells, Force of Wills, all that stuff. If you're playing something like this in Legacy, that's what you're Cabal Therapying for. And then you're gonna flashback Dread Return, and you're gonna, in this early version, this is 2013, you're going to sacrifice your 3 Narcomoebas out of 4 to flashback Dread Return. Dread Return is a key magic card that we're going to go over in a second here. You're going to bring back Angel of Glory's Rise that says when it enters exile all zombies, then return all humans from your graveyards to the battlefield. The human you return is going to be a zombie, and then also Laboratory Maniac. You're then going to be able to tap an untapped wizard you control, which is going to be the Azami, to draw a card underneath the Laboratory Maniac, and then just win the game. You have a lot of consistency engines, such as Summoner's Pact. You have a lot of mana development in Cabal Ritual and Cabal Ritual and Dark Ritual. But also back then you had like Gitaxian Probe. You still had Simian Spirit Guide and all that stuff. So you had free mana. You even had like Pauper Staple Wild Cantor. I say Pauper Staple because it's available in the One Land Spy decks, but also Chrome Mox and Lotus Petal. So you can tell there is a bunch of free mana, a bunch of free ways to get out cards, and a whole lack of lands. Lands isn't even a thing here. So just like in Manaless Dredge, just like in Oops All Spells, we see the consistency of how the theme around Balustrade Spy is there's no lands, there is a reanimation portion, and free card advantage, right? So there is some amount of reanimation through some type of free aspect and no lands. How does that develop over time in our games of Magic, and how does that power creep itself through different formats? The last example I want to showcase is with One Land Spy in Pauper. And the reason I want to highlight this is there was a big shifting point. When it comes to Pauper, One Land Spy existed in a very similar way to the way we just saw. A lot of these cards are somehow Pauper legal. Simian Spirit Guide, Wild Cantor, Dark Ritual, Songs of the Damned. These are all legacy playable Magic cards that were somehow at some point printed at common. The way you won in this deck, though, is you needed a Conjurer's Bauble out, right? So you Conjurer's Baubled out. Balustrade Spy was printed at common at some point. Shout out to the fact that if they print something like Undercity Informer at common, Pauper would absolutely break. They would have to ban both of those, actually. Conjurer's Bauble says when it's on the battlefield, you can sacrifice Conjurer's Bauble, put 1 card from a graveyard at the bottom of your library, and then you draw a card. So if you have no cards in your deck right now, you have 0. Conjurer's Bauble lets you put any card from the graveyard into your library and you draw that 1 card. You just immediately draw that card, right? Through the activation of this as you resolve it. What you would then do is generate an amount of mana. So Balustrade Spy, the simplest version of this is you have 7 mana. You Balustrade Spy yourself, mill out your entire deck. You activate Conjurer's Bauble because you cast it to then put a Haunting Misery from your graveyard into your hand. You then cast Haunting Misery by removing X creature cards from your graveyard from the game, and Haunting Misery deals X damage to target player. And that's your win condition altogether. You have Land Grant as a way to get out your 1 of Forest, which is why it's called 1 land. Pauper doesn't have enough free mana to be able to do this without a land, which is why you require that level of consistency, quote unquote, to get your 1 land and win there. When this changed was when we had Oops All Spells really come to the forefront because of the printing of 1 card as a common. But largely speaking, Balustrade Spy has been doing fringe things in many formats for a while. And this has evolved over time in different formats through the introduction of different cards. So again, as a review, Balustrade Spy, doing broken things by milling yourself. It requires some reanimation engine, some free cards coming in, and ultimately you are trying to find 1 card that wins you the game. In Pauper, it's a little bit simpler. Now it's Lot-Let Giant, but we're going to go over that in a second. In other formats, it is Thassa's Oracle. And that is your consistency piece, right? So in the Legacy metagame, Oops All Spells is one of the top 5 decks in the format. Right now, it's listed at number 6, but let's be honest, in the league level, at the casual level, even probably at the LGS level, if you have some level of Legacy event, you will probably be seeing Oops All Spells trying to poop on players, right? Oops All Spells in Legacy. You have Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer. You then mill your deck out through the combination of playing MDFCs and rituals such as Dark Ritual and Cabal Ritual and Lotus Petal to then cast these 2, as I mentioned, to then mill out your deck. Narcomoeba then comes out and serves as initially as your fodder to then cast Dread Return. As we see, Dread Return's a pretty common facet amongst all this, a reanimation target to then bring back Thassa's Oracle. Thassa's Oracle is one of the single most broken Magic cards printed in Magic's history. That is it. Thassa's Oracle is the linchpin, cornerstone, maybe linchpin's a bad word, but the cornerstone win condition of many CEDH decks many combo decks, it is the marquee win condition. I look forward to the day when Thassa's Oracle gets banned in all these formats, because it will happen one day, right? Just not now. Your Thassa's Oracle is the reanimation piece. The key to this is that you are also playing Cabal Therapy. As mentioned in the 2013 article, Cabal Therapy sticks through this. Through engines like Bridge from Below, you sacrifice your Narc Amoebas, which come out for free, the free creatures coming out, the free value, to then look at your opponent's hand and say, hey, do you have an instant speed piece of graveyard interaction? Do you have a Forcible, whatever it is? You get that out of their hand, and then you reanimate the Thassa's Oracle. Or if they use something like Fairy Macabre, which is instant speed in response to your Cabal Therapy, be able to get your Thassa's Oracle, with extra mana that you have, you activate Jack-o'-lantern in your graveyard to then add, to turn that mana that you have, that could be black, red, white, whatever, turn it into green. That green mana then allows you to flashback Memory's Journey at instant speed for 1 green to shuffle the Thassa's Oracle back into your deck alongside any other 2 cards, up to 2 cards, back into your deck so that you can protect it from the graveyard hate. And then you probably add something like 2 Lotus Petals or whatever to then play Lotus Petal, or something to then be able to cast your Thassa's Oracle and win from there. You've taken out their counter magic, you've taken out their graveyard hate, and you win from there. So again, the consistency of milling yourself out, a reanimation target being manipulated through free cards entering your battlefield to then reanimate one singular win condition. That is what we've evolved to, at least in many a metagame. In the Pauper metagame, Spy combo has become very popularized, and right now, whether it's 1-land Spy, 2-land Spy, Pauper Wall Spy combo, 5-land Spy, there's so many different versions of Spy that each have their own pluses and minuses. The central engine to it is the Balustrade Spy. You have Balustrade Spy. Sometimes you have the Dimir House Guard to be able to transmute and tutor for the Balustrade Spy, or if you're in 1-land Spy, you're playing the black and 4 sorcery that destroys a land and then target player looks for, they mill until they find another land. It's just another like version of it, right? So you play that. You then cast Dread Return, which was printed as a common in Commander Masters, which absolutely changed the way combo works in this format and will change the trajectory of the Pauper format in the future, because Dread Return is a legal card in this, of making Dredge actually a playable variant in this format, alongside the printing of Lot-Led Giant at common. When Lot-Led Giant enters, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature in your graveyard. So it's not about Thassa's Oracle. Thassa's Oracle is not a common. You are dread returning a Lot-Led Giant with a critical mass of creatures in your deck being milled over. In 1-land Spy variants, you have the Simian Spirit Guides, you have the Lotus Petals. In the 5-land Spy Walls combo variants, you have a bunch of ways to get your forests and swamps. So you want to tutor those out through stuff like, where is it? The Gatekeeper Vines and Land Grants. You get them out of your deck, you make a bunch of mana, and then you just win the game from there. You get them all out of your deck and you win the game. Now, in different versions of the deck, you still play Conjurer's Baubles, some play Lotus Petals, it really on your preference, but that's how Pauper works right now. It's very similar to Legacy, but it aligns with the interaction that exists in the Pauper format. A lot of answers to it, similar to how in Legacy, but in the Legacy version of it, because you have Eternal Magic, you have a lot of ways to build in natural game 1 interactions. So if we back up here, this deck will play 4 Pact Negation, 4 Thoughtseize. So you have the hand disruption and the counter magic in the main board, because the interaction is powerful enough, or I should say the support is powerful enough to play the interaction. You have the Dark Rituals, you have the free mana, you have the MDFCs, you have the consistency where you don't have to play it like Pauper, where you need a bunch of mana sources and a bunch of ways to get your basics, and heck, even play basics, whereas MDFCs are not common at all. Next up in the modern format, we get something a little bit different. Now, notably, Dread Return is not modern legal. So how do we make Oops All Spells work in the modern format? Well, similar to the Legacy format, we have MDFCs. You have, You have Witch's Enchanter, which many of you Blink players will recognize, Amiria's Call. You have, The Fell the Profane, Agadeem's Awakening. You have all of the classic MDFC spells that you've come to know and hate. The way this deck works is you Balustrade Spy or Undercity Informer yourself after casting some amount of MDFCs for lands. Then what you do is after everything is milled away, you get your Narcomoeba. So your free value, your free creatures coming back. Narcomoeba consistently seems to be a broken piece here. When a 1/1 enters, you then trigger Sword of the Meek. Sword of the Meek says whenever a 1/1 creature enters the battlefield under your control, which is a Narcomoeba, you may have Sword of the Meek enter the battlefield and have it attached to that creature. Well, then what you do is Phantasmagoria, or not Phantasmagoria, Salvage Titan is milled over into your deck. You may exile 3 artifacts from your graveyard to return Salvage Titan from your graveyard to your hand. You can exile Talismans, Solar Transformer, Pentad Prism, all that stuff. You can exile 3 of them, return them to your hand. Note that in this turn that you're comboing off, you have cast Undercity Informer or Balustrade Spy, or Balustrade Spy. You have cast at least 1 creature. Once you return the Salvage Titan to your hand, you may sacrifice 3 artifacts rather than pay this spell's mana cost. So you can then sacrifice the 3 Sword of the Meeks that have entered the battlefield through the Narcomoeba to cast Salvage Titan. That second cast will then trigger the 4 Vengevines in your graveyard. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if it's the second creature spell you cast this turn, you may return Vengevine from your graveyard to the battlefield. After milling your whole graveyard and triggering 4 Creeping Chills, you have gained 12 life and your opponent has taken 12 damage. They're at 8. At that point, 4 Vengevines have they probably have to be lethal in some way, shape, or form. It would be absolutely wild if they were not lethal. That is the oops all spells that you get. Now, this version of the deck also has Thassa's Oracle in the main board. So if you were to cast some, if you had enough mana to mill your whole deck and beseech the mirror, you could sacrifice an artifact, cast Thassa's Oracle, win there. You can unearth your Thassa's Oracle and win from there. You could even cast Agadeem's Awakening and cast and reanimate your Thassa's Oracle for the win from there. There are many different ways where Thassa's Oracle isn't necessarily like the main board plan, but you still have a way to win through damage with damage alongside Thassa's Oracle. It becomes the consistent part to it. The only reason this isn't necessarily super broken in Modern right now is simply because Dread Return is not a Modern legal card. If Dread Return was Modern legal, you could 1-for-1. You could actually 1-for-1 the Legacy Oops All Spells deck to Modern. Let's back it up. The Legacy Oops All Spells deck, you can near 1-for-1, okay? Simian Spirit Guide banned in Modern. Poxwalker's not legal, and you don't have Cabal Therapy. But you have Memory's Journey, all the MDFCs, Narcomoeba, Lotus Petal, not Modern legal, but you do have the Pactum Negation, and you have the Thoughtseize. You have multiple cards in this deck that can generate the mana, that you have the MDFCs for. You could play more consistency pieces. You don't have the speed to which Bridge from Below is also banned in the Modern format, and you don't have the Cabal rituals or the Dark rituals, but you have the consistency in the MDFCs to then go into the Dread Return win to protect it and win with Thassa's Oracle. You even have Goblin Charbelcher, which you could play as an alternative. Because honestly, if it's not for the rituals and the fast mana, this deck would also probably in Modern just become a Goblin Charbelcher deck to the point where you have a graveyard win and an artifact activation win, and your opponent doesn't even know how to stop this. The only thing that could consistently would probably be the counterspell decks. So it's not an exact 1-for-1. I was being facetious, but still, Dread Return is not legal in Modern, which really slows this deck down in terms of being viable and being actually a good consistent deck, because this deck really gets stopped when it comes to just having interaction in general. The Pioneer metagame, Balustrade Spy and the Undercity Informer have actually already been dealt with. As mentioned, February 15, 2021, Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer have been banned. This is probably a ban that you will see across a couple of different formats coming up. In Pauper, likely Legacy. Maybe Pauper, likely Legacy. We will be seeing a change in this format. Already dealt with, this card was doing very similar things when it comes to the Pioneer format. What you did here was you had a similar situation where you would reanimate a bunch of things. So you would Balustrade Spy or Undercity Informer yourself through the introduction of the MDFCs. And then once you milled yourself out, you would have, your Creeping Chills gaining you a bunch of life. Those Creeping Chills gaining you life would then trigger Silver Smoke Ghouls to re-enter from your graveyard to the battlefield, and alongside Narcomoebas. That would then trigger the Prized Amalgams to come back on the turn after, and then you could go in for a wide board that your opponent would have a very hard time dealing with. Now, notably, that's not hasty. They're not They're not anything like the, forgetting the name of it right now. If I could back up here, the Vengevines. So you play Worldspine Worm. Worldspine Worm says when it's put in the graveyard for anywhere, shuffle it back into an owner's library. So you don't have an empty deck anymore. You still have the ability to draw and continue to play the game alongside everything that you cast. So with Neoforms, Abrupt Decays, and Thought Seizes, all the interaction in the world, you will be able to stop your opponent from stopping you. This deck was absolutely insane. The Pioneer format did not have the tools necessary to beat this, and in many ways, it'd actually probably be the only thing that could consistently beat the red decks at the top right now. So Pioneer already has dealt with this card. Thassa's Oracle, at the end of the day, a consistent piece amongst all of this, seems to be one of the most problematic cards in Magic's history. In Commander, in 1v1 Constructed, Thassa's Oracle continues to be the bane of every Magic player's existence, and the other card alongside of it is Dread Return. What I'm showcasing in this video is that it's not necessarily Balustrade Spy or Undercity Informer. The problem is, with the cards being introduced that have already existed in Eternal Magic, as well as in more recent Magic sets with the MDFCs, we have opened Pandora's box already. They will not be banning the MDFCs or banning Lotus Petal in Legacy. But what they will be doing is allowing powerful pieces like Dread Return to continue to exist and Thassa's Oracle to be a win condition while banning cards that see niche play. They will ban the Balustrade Spy. They will ban the Undercity Informer. They will stop our ability to play combo decks like that by not stopping the win condition or the enablers, but the start of the engine. They won't ban Dread Return. They won't ban Thassa's Oracle, but they will ban the Balustrade Spy and the Undercity Informer as likely the direction that we're going. So hopefully this video serves as an education piece to keep you informed on why Balustrade Spy exists as a powerhouse in multiple formats, the current state of them, and as well the support pieces for each deck. I hope that I've at least added a little bit of knowledge to the next conversation you might have around combo and Balustrade Spy and just the power in different formats. And ultimately, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer. I love them personally. I understand the power of them. It is my favorite deck in multiple formats that they exist in. This is my favorite deck in Pauper. It is close to my favorite deck in Legacy. Ultimately, it's got to be Painter because it's a mill deck. And in Modern, it could be if it was a bit more powerful, but no one's going to stop my love for my Modern mill deck. Regardless, it's a powerful Magic card. It will be seeing a lot of exits in a couple of formats, probably coming up in our near future. But for now, you have a better understanding of one of the most randomest niche cards to come out of Gatecrash that has made such a big impact because of design of current Magic the Gathering.